Hey, welcome to the Steve Davis Show. Special guest today is Marty Saiz, the new author of Boys Basketball. And Marty, hey, what summer you've had?
I've had with COVID going around, it's been a blessing to be able to travel the state and try to complete my book I started since 2012.
I tell you, you this summer though, you hit it really hard. I mean, you were you went to my stomping grounds, Clovis, and
yeah, we
went
missed
to
you over
Hobbs.
there.
We went to Hobbs. You've been down to Las Cruces. You've been just.
I think we've been to 45 high schools throughout the whole state. The only part of the state I have not been to yet is Farmington, Shiprock, Kirtland Central, but I pretty much have hit with my cameraman Dana Childs. We've hit just about every part of the state and interviewed so far as of Saturday 226 coaches, players, sports figures like broadcasters, sports writers for the book.
The book is going to come out. What's your deadline on that? Or
My goal,
Yeah.
COVID allows me to do it. It's been, I was hoping to have all the interviews done by the end of September. My goal is to have the book ready, available to the public by March. Hopefully there's a state basketball tournament in March, and March will be the 100th anniversary of the first state tournament, so I'm kind of using that as a target.
What gave you the idea to get this going? I know you're a sports guy. You love sport. You love coaches. You love to, you like to coach yourself. You've done a lot of things, but.
Well, first of all, I like history. As a kid, I was one of those kids that collected basketball cards and knew all the players and stats and stuff, and that's always been special. Being in the Sports Hall of Fame, being around a lot of sports figures in history and doing a lot of their stories for the programs. I enjoyed it. And in 2012, it was just a curiosity of, I had Bryce Alford and Cullen Neal in our AU club. I've been doing AU now for the last 20-some years, and I was kind of curious where Bryce and Cullen stood in the records. It was like right before Christmas 2012, the games in December had ended, and I went to look at the NMA record book, and I didn't see their names anywhere. And so I called Frank Castillo, and Frank says, I'm really busy with this season. It's Christmas time, but I'll send you the stuff. So he sent me the 3-year stats for Bryce. I called Roy Sanchez, same thing, and then I called the parents. I figured they might know it, and then Steve Alford says, well, once you figure this out, you call me. And I didn't want to make Steve mad at the time. Danny Granger was giving us $40,000 to our AU club, and a call from Steve would have ended that. And so, right between Christmas and Year's, I kind of figured out where those two stood. And at that time, Bryce was on time to break a record that had been there since 1963, Nick Pino's record. I told Steve, if he stays at this pace, right now he's the leading scorer in the country, 39.8 points per game. The bad news, Steve, is Cullen's got 1,652 points in his career, and Bryce has 1,635 points. And Steve says, well, you better not say nothing. I don't want you to tell anybody because there's enough rivalry between the two. And I said, the other bad news is last year Cullen had the most points in the state at 831, and Bryce had 830. And they played in the state championship game in 2012, and so ironically, the next game was the Metro tournament, and Bryce goes off for 40, and Cullen has 23, and now they're tied career-wise. And so I couldn't say nothing until the end of January. I called Steve on a Sunday. I said, Steve, Bryce just broke the 2,000 mark. Only one other player, according to my research at the time, had hit over 2,000 in the Metro, and that was Marcus Williams from Rio Rancho. And I said, it'd be a shame that nobody knows that Bryce became the Metro all-time scorer. And so he said, okay, share it with the media. And so that night, he goes, don't tell Frank. And I told Frank, I said, Bryce only needs 7 points to become the all-time Metro record. And they announced it. And ironically, they were playing Cleveland, and Marcus Williams' dad, Wallace, works for assistant coach for Cleveland, and his mom's a scorekeeper. And they had no clue that Marcus had that many points. And it was like 3 or 4 days later, the Journal picked it up. But they never mentioned the Metro. They just started chasing the state record. And so then I had a really good club that year, and I started looking at some of the stats, looking at like Volcano Vista. They had their stats up on the wall, and hey, Sam Haywood's on some of these groups. And so the state records was where the goal was. And then about 3 weeks before the state tournament, I get a call from a guy from Bosque Farms. He says, the guy that Bryce is chasing for the state record is not the true state record. And I can prove it. So he came to my office with scorebooks from 8th grade to 12th grade, and we added them up, and sure enough, this guy had 30 more points, and that was Alfred Romero Jr. from Wagon Mount in 1977. And so the curiosity of state records was where I was getting, and then I started posting it, all the findings I had on the state records. I was finding a lot of the records hadn't been updated because athletic directors or coaches never submitted the records, and so I started researching newspapers and stuff, and so that's where I started trying to figure out is updating the state records was my goal.
Well, I tell you, validity. I mean, I know you like you said, you think something, and then somebody comes in, and I know you and I have talked all summer about, oh, did you know this guy and that? And
right.
We had lunch had a great lunch one day, and it was amazing all the things you found out over the period of the history of basketball in the state of New Mexico.
Well, it was kind of a neat, and then so I started posting on one of the groups on Facebook called Basketball History of New Mexico by Ben Moffitt, who used to be a former Albuquerque Journal sports writer, and about 3 years into us, he goes, "How much stuff have you accumulated?" And so I looked at my folder, and I had like 2,500 articles. He goes, "Have you ever considered writing a book?" No, I was just trying to do the state records, and so he's one that kind of convinced me to think about writing a book. Ben at the time was writing some. He said he was writing a book on the history. I don't know what angle he was going on. There had been a book previously on the ghost gyms in New Mexico by Steve Flores, and so we talked about it, and so he kind of convinced me to write 4 books, one on coaches, one on scorers, playmakers, and big men. That was my goal in 2016-17. And then he introduced me to Chuck Ferris, who's kind of the basketball historian of New Mexico too. He's probably spent way more time than I have, really focusing on the coaches side of everything, and so. But he shared a lot of information. In fact, with the help of the NMA and Chuck, I was able to scan all the programs from 1945 to 2017, the state basketball tournament. And then I decided to go camping. And I had all these boxes, and for 6 days I was out in the mountains in northern New Mexico, and I started going through it. In 1955, there was an article on a guy named Herman Gallegos, and his team, he played for Pecos High School. His team didn't make state, but Herman was the first player, according to this article, to hit 600 points in a season and 700 points in a season, and they had every game's the totals for every game, and from my research, he's the first player I could find that scored 40 points in a game, and the first player to hit over 50 at 56. But you never see Herman's name anywhere since then on any of the scorebooks. Today, 56 would still be a top 10 scoring thing. And so Alfred Romero Jr. and Herman Gallegos were kind of my motivation to write a book and share stories that on people that were successful in basketball. And as I started to progress, that was the goal. And then unfortunately in 2017, my mom died. And I just put everything away.
Well, Marty, let's go to the top 10 plays of last year and come back and talk more about your book.
Okay. Sorry.
I'll just get a little closer. Oh, instead it's a gorgeous pass. He'll just shoot it.
He's going to go all the way.
He's going to fire at the buzzer, and he hits.
Great pass, Hadbury, and thank you very much. Heavyweight tie in the district. Inside, fly, Eagles.
Chavez uses some athleticism. And then Morris down low, able to finish. You called it, Steve, in 10 seconds. And look at this. Stripped, stolen Watson. Christian Lucero beats the buzzer. Here's Ian Chavez, the sharpshooter. Got it.
Couldn't have said that any better. He answered the question. He
On
got
a
another
steal
one.
at the buzzer. Back to back for Chavez.
To the paint. Medina from the volleyball lines. Medina wants another one from deep. Oh, he wants 10. Give him 10.
Lewis finds Watson. He's going to finish. One-handed slam. Volcano Vista, but just all the different scenarios we could see potentially play out ahead of the state tournament.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Boys basketball in the state of New Mexico, and what a thrill.
Well, I don't know if I'm an author yet, so the book's finished, then I'll be an official author. But yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I've had a lot of fun going through this, and you know, I mentioned after my mom passed away in 2017, I kind of put this away, you know, and then early in February, I get a call from somebody that says, hey, I need some photos back in 2004, and you know, I didn't realize I have like 4 or 5 backup drives, and I think probably close to 500,000 photos I've taken in all the sports, football, basketball, being under the basket. And then, by the way, I just kind of looked over at my state record folder, and it was already up to like 8,000 articles and stuff. And then in April, I decided.
You even have articles of me. I mean,
I even have.
You surprised me.
Steve Davis, student athlete, student of the week at Clovis High School. Favorite hobby was chess. I didn't even know 4.0 student. I said, man, I'm really impressed with Steve Davis. You know, but yeah, it's been fun doing the research. And then in April, I started I used Facebook as a kind of my testing ground, and so I was trying to find more top players, and then I could go research, because I created some clubs, the 40-point club, anybody that scored over 40 points or in a game, anybody that scored 600 points in a season, anybody that scored 1,200 in a career. And so I put out, I wasn't getting much first couple times I posted, and then I said, oh, I'm just going to put the top 10 players I think ever. I know that's going to create some controversy, like you forgot this player, you forgot that player, and then and it was, you know, how about this guy? You forgot that guy, and some of the people I don't remember, and then somebody, it was like a Saturday, and I was getting a lot of posts that weekend. Somebody says, why don't you post by decade? And so I had it didn't take me very long, and that evening I did the 50s, the 60s, and 70s, and then the next on Sunday I did the 80s, 90s, 2010s, and I got so much information, and my goal was to eventually do more than stats, is to bring stories about from the top players and stuff, and through that I realized I'm not going to do a top 10 or top 50 or whatever. I'm going to do the most accomplished players. That's how I'm going to word everything, because it's really hard to say who the top 10 players are ever or in a decade, because of the style of basketball, whatever. But I hope the book will bring some discussion through that. And then all of a sudden, I started, had a referee send me a message, says, "Aren't you going to talk about us referees? We're part of the game." And for about 3 or 4 days, I posted stuff on Facebook, and all of a sudden, I had like 400 or 500 posts on 3 different sites that I posted on, and I said, well, maybe I'll do a chapter on referees. And then I'm talking to Sammy C. up in Gallup about trying to get coaches and players out there, and says, "Hey, aren't you going to do anything on us sportscasters?" And so I threw it on Facebook for 3 or 4 days and got quite a few hits, and then I was going to start to do a page on each year. In the first year of sanctioned basketball was 1921, and then 1921 hit me. 2021, that's 100 years. Maybe I'll just do one book instead of one on coaches, players, and the playmakers, big man. I'm just going to do one big book. And then all of a sudden, through Facebook, things have evolved. I get a call one night from a guy named Bryce Carger, and he says, "You got to write a story on Cinderella teams, the 1983 Lovington team." So on Facebook, for the next couple of days, hey, any Cinderella team or big upsets? Got about 90 games, and so it's evolved. Rivalries, what's the biggest rivalries? Player against player, or teams and communities, and so Facebook has been kind of my testing ground to develop the stories. And again, I wanted to go out and get the stories behind the stories. I could do all my research and put a book together, but I wanted to get some more background in. And so I decided to go out and start interviewing people. And I didn't want everybody to say, "Oh, you're just focusing on Albuquerque," or "You're just focusing on the North," or "You're just focusing on the big schools or small schools." With Dana Childs, who's a cameraman for you guys, he helped us last year with Jim Holzman's interview. I asked him to go, and June 11th, our first interview with the COVID, and we had to work around the COVID situation, was Frank Castillo and A.J. Bramlett. And I think we've been at 45 high schools and 226 interviews since that time period.
Well, who is one of your most accomplished players?
Well, I think the most accomplished player ever, and I think it's really easy, is Bill Bridges from Hobbs High School. He led Hobbs to 2 state titles in the 50s, went on to have a successful career at the University of Kansas, which is one of the premier college programs. His jersey's retired at the University of Kansas. He's in their Hall of Fame, and for me, it's a big deal. The rebounding trophy each year is the Bill Bridges Trophy. Wilt Chamberlain back in the day played right before Bill, but the trophy is named after Bill Bridges. And then Bill goes on to play 13 seasons in the NBA, almost close to 1,000 games. There's nobody from New Mexico that ever got closer. I think the closest is Kenny Thomas, and he played like 500 games in the NBA. So as far as accomplishments, there's no one closer than Bill Bridges from Hobbs.
And I just got to ask, biggest rivalry, who you think? You've done your research, and but I'm just saying, you.
The biggest rivalry, I haven't put that down, but I would have to say.
Let's narrow top 5. In no order.
I think the most intense rivalry in my research is Grants and Bernalillo. Would be my most intense. Valley against Albuquerque High, pretty intense. And I have to throw in Clovis versus Hobbs. I know
we can stop right there.
Clovis and Hobbs. The only sad part about that in my research, it took 1979 for like 20 years. Clovis couldn't beat Hobbs at Hobbs, and
that is a dagger right there.
It is. But it's also one of my most. The game that they did finally beat Hobbs is probably one of the most memorable games. I'm going to have memorable games, and that's one of them. In fact, your coach, Jimmy Joe Robinson, I asked him what his most memorable game was. I thought he would say the 1979 state championship game, and he says, no, it was us beating Hobbs. We were undefeated. We went down. I had just suspended 3 of my big men, my starters, and everybody says we don't have no chance. But good thing is they had 2 super guards, and Nelson France and Bubba Jennings, and they go down to Hobbs' packed gym. You played in those packed gyms, and they lead Hobbs with 4 minutes to go in the game. Bubba gets hit, and he lands on the ground and has a gash that will eventually have 15 stitches, and he's bleeding all over the place, and they have to pull him out of the game, and with about 25 seconds of game, they're up by 1, and Nelson tells coach, we got to get Bubba back in. They're going to double team me, and we're going to get fouled. And Brooks Jennings, Bubba's dad, who used to coach at Clovis, the head coach, comes out and says, you got to put Bubba in. And they tape him up, and he goes in, and sure enough, they foul him with about 7 seconds to go, and he can't even see the basket. He goes, I can't even see, and so Nelson lines him up, wipes out, uses his jersey to wipe his eyes off, and says, hey, you've done this hundreds of times. Just bounce that ball and shoot it in, and Bubba swishes both of them, and they beat Hobbs first time in like 20 years and so.
So let's take a little break and come back and talk more about, I guess, basketball.
Okay.
Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth that's real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Hey, welcome back to Steve Davis Show. We got Marty Saiz, not the author yet, but will be an author. Is that right?
Will be, yeah.
Will be.
I'm wannabe author right now, but you know.
All the titles that you've had in your life, now you're going to be, it's kind of like you're almost working on your doctor's degree. So.
Well, on my dream list, I always wanted to write a book, and so this has been kind of a fun time for me, especially like I said with the COVID and all that stuff. It's been a great outlet for me. And to travel the whole state. I've been in places I've never been to. I've never been to Mora, Pecos. I've never been to Cimarron, Camado, Lordsburg. I mean, actually go into the town and visit the town. So, me and Dana could put a tourism video for the state of New Mexico of all the places.
And most of your interviews were done in gyms.
We wanted to do them in gyms, and hopefully sometimes in the older gym. There might be the newer version, but like Santa Rosa is a good example. We did it in the older gym, not the new gym, and so like McCurdy, we did it at McCracken Gym. It's kind of like the mid-school gym now, and so I wanted it to be in the gyms and the stories, and Dana's a former athlete in Nebraska, so he's doesn't know New Mexico basketball, but Dana.
I think he knows it now.
Yeah, well, he knows it now. I mean, and he was on the state championship team in Nebraska, and the other day coming from Espanola, he goes, "How many interviews we've done?" I said, "Man, we've done almost 200 some interviews." He goes, "We haven't had one bad interview. We have 200 some great stories and more to share, and so." That's going to be my challenge, is put all these stories together. And I kind of know I've already had the layout of what I wanted to do. And so I'll put the stories behind the stories. And I'm going to have a hard copy book and an ebook. So some of the interviews will be in that ebook, game films. I got recently the 1962 state championship game between St. Mike's, the Mighty Midgets against Sandia. When I was down at Hobbs, they gave me a couple of the state titles, game clips, photos. I got photos from back in the 20s, the 30s, and so I hope the book has a lot of photos. It's going to have some stats. It's going to have stories, and I hope it gives a positive version of what the impact of high school basketball boys on the boys' side. I hope if this is successful, then
you start with the women?
With the girls. Well, my target date is 2023. That'll be the 50th anniversary of girls basketball. It started in 1973 as far as sanction. And so I already have like 2,000 articles for the girls, because people say, oh, how about the girls? They'll send me some stuff, so I have it in my folder. But, hopefully I can share some great stories and that people maybe never heard about, or players or people. And, one of the stories I did the other day at Gallup, I'm going to have a chapter on sports broadcasters. We got to do Harrison, I may chop his last name, Dujai. He's been broadcasting for the last 20 years basketball games in Navajo to the whole Navajo Nation. The stories that he came up with was kind of cool. I thought it was I said, man, how come I don't know about Harrison? He's on Sports Illustrated. You and I have never been on Sports Illustrated, and Harrison has an article in Sports Illustrated.
Well, you missed that. I have been in Sports Illustrated.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Where were you on Sports Illustrated?
COAC Players of the Week.
Oh, COAC Players of the Week. Yeah. See, I haven't researched Steve Davis yet. I didn't finish my research on Steve Davis, because you let us down by not going up.
A guy named Dan Davis.
Yeah, when you guys beat UTEP.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So see, I know a little bit. So I knew your first job was a grad assistant for the University of Lobos. Your senior year, you decided not to go your senior year and be a grad assistant. So. I know a little bit about you. I haven't done a thorough background check on you, Steve, but we'll get there.
Well, I just, I wanted to bring, you just don't know who you're sitting with sometimes.
Yeah, actually, that's been the case. Sometimes
that's really true.
People say, think I'm interviewing all the top players and coaches. I'm just trying to find people that can tell me some stories. There was a guy down in Silver City who's been an assistant coach for 30 years, and somebody sent me a message like, why are you doing him? He didn't do nothing. The stories that a coach was able to share with me were powerful. Just what Mark Sanders had done for him, and some of the impact he had done in the community, and what he had seen as an assistant coach. And so sometimes looking through somebody else's eyes, last night had one of my longest interviews with Mike Sanders. That was a really awesome interview. Unfortunately, Coach Sanders has got dementia and living in Texas in a nursing home, and I can't visit him no more. Fortunately, I did get to interview him when we inducted him in the Sports Hall of Fame a few years ago. But me and Mike talked for over an hour last night about him, following his dad as a water boy, as a little kid, to winning, hitting those 2 free throws in the 1982 team, undefeated team, and he hitting the 2 free throws with 5 seconds to go, and his dad telling him later, says, man, I wish you weren't at the free throw line as a father, to be in that position. But as a coach, I knew I had the best player on there. To see that emotion from Mike, got some tears. You get some tears on some of these people that get really emotional and stuff. And your coach, Jimmy Joe Robinson, got a little emotional in what we did. He even said you were one of the best players he ever coached.
Well,
he said.
Well, you know what? We're going to leave it at that.
I want to leave it a positive. He said you were one of the smartest players. You played hard. You knew the game. You were like a coach on the court, and he talked highly of you.
Well, Marty, we're out of time, and we're going to come back and revisit when you get more details.
I'll get you updated. Hopefully by January. I'll really start cranking out the writing here in November and December. I hope to have all the interviews done here in the next few weeks, and then I'll finish up all my stories.
All right. Thanks a lot, Marty.
Thank you.